Welcome back to Girlboss Radio. I'm your host, Avery. I'm also the founder and CEO of Bloom, an HR and DEI consulting firm, and a big believer that work should work for all of us. Is the looming threat of AI keeping you up at night? I know it definitely felt that way for me until after this conversation. It seems like our news feeds are inundated with stories about AI, big tech's warnings of AI's dark side, new and innovative tools that are changing lives, and how all of our jobs are going to be obsolete in 10 years. It's very easy to feel overwhelmed. I know I do, and scared about the implications of AI and the future of work. That's why people love Dr. Joy Buolamwini. She is a groundbreaking MIT researcher, a poet of code, and the founder of the Algorithmic Justice League, a digital advocacy nonprofit organization on a mission to raise awareness about the impacts of AI. She's also the author of Unmasking AI, and she has explored AI's racial bias in facial recognition algorithms in the Netflix documentary Coded Bias, which I'm sure you've probably seen. In today's episode, Dr. Joy and I talk about how to future-proof your job, how AI will impact the future of work, and whether or not AI can ever really be ethical. Let's get into it. Dr. Joy, welcome to Girlboss Radio. I'm actually kind of scared to have this conversation today.
I'm excited to have this conversation with you today.
AI scares me. I think that I'm not alone of
That's
being
true.
someone, right? So I'm just going to ask all the questions that I know that our listeners are probably curious about when it comes to all things AI. And I wanted to start with the World Economic Forum predicts that AI will replace 85 million jobs by 2025. Do I need to be worried about losing my jobs? And by jobs, I mean the multiple jobs that I have.
I think everybody has to be concerned about the impact of AI, definitely on the economy and in terms of jobs. And I think about it not just from the jobs that will be replaced, but also the gatekeepers, because now you have AI systems that are being used to sort resumes, right? And so there's been evidence showing that resumes that had women's colleges on them were being categorically blocked from even being considered as part of the pool. I'm also thinking about promotions, who gets hired as well as who gets fired, who gets promoted. You have companies that are adopting these AI assessment and performance tools as well. And so I think those concerns are absolutely valid, but I also think there's a lot of agency in deciding how we move forward with AI tools. And I do want to offer a cautionary tale, because the stories we tell about AI and the predictions we make about AI also influence the actions we take. So case in point, NEDA, National Eating Disorder Association, they actually had workers who were saying, look, we need to be treated better. They were starting to unionize and that kind of thing. Leadership decided to fire the workers and replace them with the chatbot. I think the headline was on Monday. By Friday or somewhere around there, they actually had another headline: NEDA shuts down the chatbot. Why? The chatbot was actually giving advice that's known to make eating disorders worse. Advice that those who are trained in this area would never give. And so here it was the power of the narratives we're hearing and also believing about AI that led to the job loss in that case. And I think it's really easy to underestimate the value of humans when you're being told that these superhuman tools and AI systems can replace us. And then you find out it's a little more complicated than that. And so I would also urge caution in just buying into the narrative, and within workplaces, right? Really ask, why are we adopting this tool? Is it truly giving us the benefit we're hoping for?
Yeah, definitely. I've been actually recommending, and just for context, I lead a DEI and HR consulting firm called Bloom. We do a lot of advisory and service-based kind of offerings around recruiting and hiring. We've been advising against organizations using AI, specifically when it comes to hiring, unless they have people that are being allocated directly to ensure that they are patrolling and managing and really kind of auditing the outcomes that are coming from the use of AI in their hiring systems. And that's if they already have like some really great hiring systems going into leveraging AI, which quite frankly, a lot of companies don't know how to hire well. And then what they're doing is they're just pushing those flaws into the AI tools that they're looking to hopefully solve their problems.
And building on that as well, you also have the EEOC that they've been looking at algorithms for some time and they're saying, hey, everything that was discriminatory before you adopted the AI system is still so. And so I remember some years back when I published some of my research, I did an op ed for the New York Times and I actually called out a particular company that was adopting AI in the hiring process, and they were using it to analyze videos of candidates. And so their own marketing material said, from the videos, we're assessing problem solving ability, things where you're already getting a little bit nervous. And then don't worry, we're using data based on prior successful hires. What could go wrong with that? And so I think we have to be extremely cautious that we're not bringing the prejudice of the past into the technologies that are marketed as taking us into the future. And oftentimes that is happening.
Yeah. So for people that are listening, how can we protect ourselves in this big evolution towards more AI in our workplaces and obviously essentially to protect our jobs?
Yeah, I think there are several pieces as far as what you do as an individual, what you do as an employee, and what you do as an employer, right? So this is Girl Boss podcast. So I'm guessing there's some bosses out there. So for the employers, first of all, it might not sound so sexy, procurement, but actually make sure whatever you're adopting is fit for purpose, because oftentimes what we find is you've been sold a problem. We're going to solve your problems. Who's going to say no, right? We're going to make it easier. We're going to find the right candidate and we'll do it without bias. Sounds great. So actually test that the promises meet the reality before adopting a system. The other thing that we're seeing in many workplaces is kind of the shadow adoption of AI systems. So maybe a workplace might say, okay, we have proprietary information. Don't put this within some of these AI systems, because depending on the settings, the companies can take that and do whatever they will. So I think it's also really important that you don't accidentally compromise your workplace or even your own future within that workplace by using unauthorized AI systems, maybe to get a bit of a productivity boost. I think the other thing that's really important within the workplace for employees and employers to be thinking through is, what does it look like to have more of a pilot instead of a full cell adoption? So let's actually see what its capabilities are, but just as importantly, its limitations, because sometimes it actually shows you what the humans were doing that you were taking for granted a bit. And I think from just outside of your role as a worker or someone who's hiring others, as an individual, sometimes we don't even know we have options or we have rights. So we're seeing this, for example, with the adoption of facial recognition technologies at different airports. I don't know if you've had the experience of coming up to an airport, suddenly there are these cameras, and then a TSA officer just tells you to step up to the camera, and board. This is actually supposed to be optional, but the way it's being rolled out, people don't know they have the right to refusal. And so in cases where people are just your biometric data, your face data, think of your fingerprint, you also have a face print. That is very valuable information, and you don't just have to give it up, but oftentimes you don't know you have a choice. And so I think it's so important for people to know that in some instances they can exercise the right to refusal. I also think in schools and things like that, where you're seeing the adoption of more AI systems, you've had studies that show, for example, AI systems that are meant to detect if something else has been generated by AI, they're not flawless, but they're also flawed in particular ways. And so they were showing that, for example, students with English as a second language were more likely to be flagged as cheating. And so I do think that right to refusal, that pushing back, that asking questions, why are we adopting this? What benefits do we hope to get from it? Do we have evidence that we're actually getting that benefit? And if not, we should slow it down. We should do a pilot, or we should look at an alternative. Sometimes not everything needs AI, and so there's so much hype and excitement about it. I'm a technologist, used to build robots, all kinds of fun stuff. I love tech, but not everything needs tech. So let's also start there.
How do you think AI will actually have a positive influence on the future of work?
One company that I was really excited to look at was one that was reviewing the ways in which promotions happen and also how feedback is given. And so, women, it's more so your approach and your behavior as opposed to the work you did. And that's what you're getting feedback on, or being viewed as aggressive and all of these other things when a man would be viewed as assertive and displaying leadership qualities. So you actually have some companies that are saying, hey, this is a way we could use AI to analyze the patterns that people are using to give feedback and say, flag, oh, wait, for this particular worker or employee, this member of your team, you're giving this kind of feedback and it's a little bit different from this. Here's how to interrupt maybe that unconscious bias and actually here are prompts or suggestions for how you can give uh, better targeted feedback. So it could still be negative, it might be positive, but now you're getting at things that people can actually change in a way that would lead to more fairness. So I think that's really an interesting kind of way I've seen AI adopted.
Do you believe that it's possible for AI to be ethical?
I think it's possible to be more ethical and I think it's possible to be more responsible, right?
Let's just say, like, for someone that's listening right now and they're a marketer or they're a communications manager or even their recruiter, and they're using ChatGPT to help with boosting their productivity, maybe helping with sending emails, crafting certain pieces of writing. That's their own IP, their own stuff, nothing that they're going to be selling. Is that an ethical use of AI?
I think there are different parts to that question, right? So there's one, has the AI system you're using been made ethically? And then there's the use case for what you're doing. So what you're describing, some might be doing that by itself doesn't necessarily seem unethical unless if you're sending things you shouldn't be writing in the first place, right? So AI fueling either you're good, you're bad, you're ugly, or you're in between. And then you have the company itself and its business practices and what you want to be signaling by which tools you choose to adopt. So you have other AI companies, and maybe there's also this question of why have we chosen one tool over another? And are the business practices that that company has aligned with the values we want to show as the type of organization we are? So I also do think it's helpful to look at meaningful alternatives as well.
Yeah. So I'm going to use an example just to kind of help because I know that for folks that are just new to AI, like I'm one of these people, is ChatGPT an ethical platform for me to be using to help to boost my own personal productivity at work?
Right now, OpenAI, which is the company behind ChatGPT, is facing a lot of different lawsuits, right? And so some of those lawsuits are around the use of data. So you have authors who say, all of this excitement that we have around some of these generative AI systems, where did that data come from? And some of that data has come from copyrighted, published works that are meant to be protected that have been used to train systems without permission, right? And so part of also what happens is companies don't necessarily tell you everything that's behind the system. And so I don't think it's to an individual's fault. I think there's more responsibility on the company itself to be providing tools that are ethical. And so I almost think of it like roadways or infrastructure, right? If you need to use the roads, then there has to be something in place to fix the potholes. And I think it's also really difficult to tell people don't use roads, right? It's making sure that that infrastructure is actually maintained in a way that's not causing problems for society and built in a way where we can be proud of how it's been sourced.
Well, this is a thing. I think that a lot of us are being told if you don't start using AI, if you don't start even exploring it, you're going to be left behind. You're definitely going to lose your job because you don't even know how to use AI.
Well, here's something else I would say about that I've seen is OpenAI is one company. Powerful, they have products that are very popular and all of that, but sometimes we're seeing some people think, okay, if we're talking AI, we're talking ChatGPT and it's OpenAI. And I would say eat more. right? Fill your plate. Like you're getting some rice over here, but there's so many other spices and other things you could be adding to that palette of AI. And you don't want a bland diet. So I would say not just limiting yourself to one company or one tool is especially important. And we're in such early days of what's happening with AI that the companies that are ascendant now are nowhere near guaranteed to hold that position. We see this happen all the time in the tech space, and we've had some incumbents in there for a while where the history would show empires fall.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you for that. And I want to talk about your book. So you wrote a book called Unmasking AI: My Mission to Protect What Is Human in a World of Machines, and it dives deep into the ethical concerns around AI. What do you hope that readers take away from your book?
One, that this is a conversation for everybody. That's why I was so excited when I got the invitation to be on your podcast because I feel your conversations are real. And what I've been seeing with the AI conversation is, okay, the tech bros are talking about it, maybe the AI nerds and so forth, but what about the rest of us? And so the hope is you read the book and you learn a little bit more about how AI is made, what its limitations are, what its possibilities are, how it can impact your life, ways we can disrupt the harmful parts. And you leave with the sense of hope because there's so much hype and there's so much doom. I show examples of what winning looks like. I show examples of so many epic women who've been part of the evolution and the creation of AI and who have also been essential voices in pointing out the limitations so we can reach our aspirations. I also hope people come away with a broader sense of the cast of characters that are part of this AI revolution. And I write it as being a little kid in Oxford, Mississippi, seeing robots on TV and wondering, ooh, could I do that one day? And then bringing you along that journey from, Davos to the halls of Congress to the streets of Brooklyn and all of these different areas, showing that there's so many people who are essential for this conversation because AI is touching all of our lives. And also part of why we did the film Coded Bias as well, now Emmy nominated, right? To say there's more to the story than you might see in the headlines.
Coded Bias, I want to talk about it. It's on Netflix. So everyone right now, if they want, can go and watch it maybe after they listen to the rest of this conversation. But before we get into that, I want to talk to you a little bit about your MIT thesis. Because in your MIT thesis, you uncovered significant racial and gender bias in AI services from like major tech companies. What was your most like surprising finding as part of your research?
I think for me, it was when I started sharing the research with the company. So as as somebody who'd been in the tech world for a while, even as an undergrad, I write about this in the book. I was working on robots. I wanted a robot to play peekaboo with me. Peekaboo doesn't work when your robot doesn't see you, and my robot wasn't seeing me. So I was seeing this as an undergrad when I was at Georgia Tech. So these issues weren't necessarily new to me. What was surprising though was I was hearing about all of these advancements with AI. So I was thinking, okay, if it's becoming more advanced and now police departments are adopting this, surely it's better than when I was trying to play peekaboo and it wasn't working out. And so I think the first surprising part was that issues I had seen in earlier stages of the development of AI were still persistent. So that was a pause. Another pause for me was that the way by which we measure progress in the field, which is we have these gold standard benchmarks. When I looked at what was considered the gold standard, we weren't there. And by we, I mean women, people of color. Like one of the most famous gold standard benchmarks that was used was, I think, over 75% male, around 80% lighter skinned individuals. And then if you looked at, women of color, maybe less than 5% of that data set. So you could get everybody right but us and get a 95%, right? And so I was thinking, wow, no wonder we don't necessarily know because if our measures for success themselves don't include us, you could have people who are very well meaning, right? And thinking they have checked the benchmarks, they've performed well, and that's enough. I think the other thing that was really important for me to learn with my research was that accuracy isn't enough. And so, yes, it's so important that the research, showed the evidence. These are some of the we're talking IBM, we're talking Microsoft, later we're talking Amazon. These are not organizations that lack resources, right? So these organizations are putting out AI products that have bias. I was showing AI failing on the face of Oprah Winfrey from Amazon, right? You have IBM misgendering the Williams sisters, just echoing all kinds of things we see play out in the real world. Microsoft describing, I think, Michelle Obama's hair in all kinds of inaccurate way. It was a lot. And so for me, I saw that some people were saying, oh, okay, well, isn't the thing just make it more accurate? But then you have these kinds of technologies being deployed for mass surveillance. So now you show up at a protest, right? They could have drones, they could have cameras, they could have facial recognition on that. And now you're being swept up in different ways. So there are issues if it doesn't work. You're misidentified. Like Portia Woodruff, she was 8 months pregnant when AI filled facial recognition flagged her as committing a carjacking. I don't know anybody committing carjackings 8 months pregnant. Like that's, context clues for the detective piece. And so for me, it was like, yes, we want to make sure that we're not having people be misidentified, but we also don't necessarily want to live in a surveillance society where everywhere you go, right? Even if you leave your phone at home, now you can't leave your face at home. And so it's also not just how accurate are these systems, but how can these systems be abused, even if they were accurate? And then what preventative measures do we put in as society so we live in the society we want, where the AI tools we're adopting are actually advancing us, not oppressing us?
Victoria here, Girlboss's executive editor. I hope you're enjoying the episode so far. If you're looking for a luxury getaway to escape your everyday routine, then take this as your sign to book a stay at the Breathless Riviera Cancun Resort and Spa in Mexico. Our Girlboss team retreat turned into the ultimate escape, and we've got the Instagram highlights to prove it. Here's a rundown of our unforgettable stay at this all-inclusive, adults-only beachfront paradise. We enjoyed the best team bonding activities like a sip and paint session and a guacamole making class, which are all part of their amazing life in full color experiences. Add in delicious dinners, deep conversations by the pool, and some well-deserved downtime to chill or snap some beachside thirst traps. So whether you're planning a fun trip with a friend or your own work retreat with your team, Breathless Riviera Cancun Resort and Spa has everything you need for an unforgettable, unlimited luxury vacation. But don't just take my word for it. Come see for yourself. Book your stay today at Breathless Riviera Cancun Resort and Spa and start making memories that last a lifetime. For more details, check out the link in the show notes. And hey, don't forget your SPF. Now let's head back to the episode.
This is one of the reasons why when we've been having conversations about all the protests that have been happening since 2020, people are still wearing face masks or face coverings at these protests. And people are trying to frame these folks as like engaging in criminal activity, or they're hiding their faces because they're going to do something bad. But in fact, a lot of these people are hiding these parts of their faces as a way to protect themselves, especially Black and racialized youth that are engaging in their right to protest. And the facial recognition, a lot of people don't know about this technology, or they're not aware of it, and they're not aware of the implications, like being wrongfully identified for a carjacking in the United States as a Black human being.
This is the same police department that 3 years earlier falsely arrested Robert Williams in front of his two daughters and his wife. And he was also put in jail as well. And so it's not like a one-off. There's also another element of this where we talk about the X-coded, and those are people who've been harmed by AI systems. And so when we're talking about Robert, when we're talking about Portia, when we're talking about the racial bias and the gender bias, you might be thinking, oh, I might be safe, right? I think I'm in the more privileged part of society. But what we're seeing is really no one is immune to being X-coded. We saw this with Tom Hanks. I'm thinking about biometric rights. So biometric rights to not be falsely identified as a criminal suspect when you're not, but also in terms of the use of your likeness. So Tom Hanks, his image was used to promote some dental product he had never even heard of. And also, I think we might speak to this a little bit deeper what's happening with deepfakes as well, right? Where celebrity will not save you, whiteness will not save you in these cases.
Well, I mean, we know this happened with Taylor Swift. She was quoted as being furious over the explicit AI pictures that were shared and generated. She's one of the biggest stars in the world, but she was still just another human being reduced by this deep fake, projecting her in very explicit ways, fully nude with her likeness that was generated from deep fake AI technology.
96% of deep fakes are non-consensual deep fakes, and I think explicit deep fakes, I think about non-consensual porn, and then of that, 98% of that 96% are of women and girls. And so, yes, we have what happened with Taylor Swift, and in addition, you have girls in middle school, you know, where this is happening and these sorts of photos are being circulated. And to your point, right, Taylor Swift, with the amount of power that she has, was still targeted. What was different is after she was targeted, though, you had the introduction of the Defiance Act, which was actually saying we need to criminalize the creation of this kind of imagery and also give people a right of action to sue and take some steps here. So I do think in some ways when people with a high profile are targeted in this way, it does move the conversation to headlines in ways that didn't happen when it was middle school girls who don't have that same kind of platform. And at the same time, it is a great opportunity to say, how do we raise the standard for everybody, not just the celebrities?
The documentary Coded Bias on Netflix has raised awareness about the issue of bias in facial recognition algorithms. How do you think documentaries and media can play a role in advancing social justice and technology? And also just can you give us a little bit of background about this documentary
Yes.
too?
I am so proud of being in Coded Bias to be the protagonist. And I remember when the director, Shawnee Kantaya, she reached out on Facebook, she reached out on email, she reached out on LinkedIn, she reached out everywhere. She was very persistent. And because of the persistence, I was like, let me go ahead and just respond. And we learned that we had actually both been part of the Fulbright program. She was also a TED fellow. She came down to the MIT Media Lab where I was a student, and we did a first interview together, and it went really well. And I didn't know that would be the start of this multi-year journey that led us to Sundance for the premiere of the film. And I still get emails from people who saw Coded Bias, and they say that changed how they view technology, how they view themselves, how they view AI. I remember this guy, he's like, I'm a 60-year-old white man. I'm a mayor of this small Republican town. And I had not thought about technology in this way. Thank you for opening my eyes. Or I remember a 7-year-old Aurora, her mom reached out because they were doing some living wax museum and I'd been chosen as a historic figure, which sounded wild to me. I'm not old enough to be a historic figure yet. But in any case, she had watched it 4 times, more times than my dad. She's 7, you know? And so just seeing the amount of people it was reaching, those are the things where I know the storytelling makes a difference because people feel seen, and it also shows that there is hope. There is room for change, and they can be part of that change. And I remember modeling for a very well-known brand, but they were one of the first brands to adopt diverse AI models, and by that replacing people like me, you know, who would have been real with fake images, right? But those fake images then giving the appearance of diversity without doing the work of inclusion. And in that way, this is part of why we started the Algorithmic Justice League, because we said, look at all this progress, and there's still ways to go that we've made for civil rights, that we've made for gender parity, that we were making, you know, even for reproductive justice and things like that. And then you start to see how it can be rolled back. And then you also start to see how technology can be used to roll back the progress, but we're being told we're moving into the future. And I think that is extremely dangerous. And one of the reasons we have to keep sharing these stories about the limitations of the technology and also what is important and vital to our own human connection with each other.
The first time I became aware of your work was through the Decode the Bias in Beauty partnership that you did with Olay. And it was really, really like revolutionary. I think it's like the first thing that I've ever seen like that in the beauty industry. I'd love for you to share a little bit about your partnership with Olay and what inspired this partnership.
Yes, so I have so enjoyed the time I've had working with Olay and Procter and Gamble in terms of raising awareness about some of the limitations of AI systems. So before the Decode the Bias campaign, there was actually another campaign, Maximize Don't Minimize Me, that was led by Jennifer Hudson. And I was just so excited to be part of that ensemble. We were filming it during COVID times. I went to New York. I delivered what I needed to do. I was the last person to be filmed, and being a poet, I could memorize things, recite it pretty quickly. I think I might have saved some people some money, right? So, anyways, that was the first engagement. It went really well. And then I got such a delightful invitation to ask if I would be not just part of an ensemble, but to be the face of a campaign. That's when I said, okay, can we also do an algorithmic audit, which is we test your AI systems, and can we make those results public? And that's not something many companies do. And so when they agreed to that, I was surprised, like, "Are you sure? Because we're likely gonna find some issues." And they said, "Yes, we're sure. If we do, we will do our best to correct those issues," and that kind of thing. So that's really what cinched it for me, and we went on to, do, I think, the first of its kind, campaign talking about bias and AI in the beauty industry. What do you find when you search for beautiful skin, beautiful woman, beautiful face? When I was doing my first satellite media press tour, my makeup artist, she was probably in her late 20s, early 30s, and she's from Nigeria, and she starts crying and she's like, I know this is supposed to be for the younger women, but this is for us too. And that was another moment of representation because there I was, dark skin gleaming. I have the gold. I'm a former pole vaulter. You see my athletic sculpted arms, they're out and proud. And I'm wearing glasses, and these are like things you don't necessarily see in beauty campaigns. And I felt myself. And I was doing it in order to lift up issues that I truly care about. So it was an authentic representation for me. And then I had my hair natural. So when you think of texturism, colorism, all of these isms and what those images were doing to combat the representation of who has a voice, what beauty looks like, what brains look like as well. I was very proud of that opportunity to work with Olay in that way.
I'd really like to understand, like, for folks that are listening, that want to achieve these types of things in their career, or specifically for women that want to get into tech, what advice do you have for them?
One, don't chase the accolades. Those things came as a result of pursuing work that was important to me and work that people didn't believe in at the beginning. I remember even in grad school when I said I wanted to do a poetic PhD, right, or be a poet of code. I remember, receiving some laughter and some quizzical looks like, what is she even going on about? When I wanted to do research that was looking to see if there might be bias, racial bias, gender bias, age bias, and so forth, I was warned. I was warned by well meaning people that if you do this sort of research, it could really pigeonhole you. I think it was really important for me to have community that wasn't just in my immediate surrounding, but in a wider network. So I remember the research that I was doing, I reached out to a mailing list that I was on and I shared that, and others were able to connect me with people who are studying computer vision and AI who also happen to be Black, right? And could kind of get a sense of what I was getting at. And being researchers, we have to test it. You can have a hunch, but you still need the data. And if you're visionary, it means you're going to see things other people don't yet see. It might be years advanced, decades in advance. And so it's important that if you understand why you care about it and why people in your community care about it and why the rest of the world should care about it, that you keep persevering And then one day you might be advising the president of the United States on what to do when it comes to actually safeguarding our society from some of the harms of AI, And I don't say that to be like, okay, that is the goal, but to say it's important that you don't let the voices of negativity keep you from your destiny.
Yeah, definitely. Oh my gosh. Okay. So I would love to end off right there, but I actually have one more question before we wrap up. Generally speaking, do you feel optimistic or pessimistic about the future of AI?
Oh, I feel optimistic about the future of humanity. And AI is something that we've created. So as long as I believe in humans, I believe in our future. And I believe we can get it right such that we're creating tools that allow us to see the positive benefits this type of technology can have for society, whether it's medical breakthroughs, new types of drug therapies, fun ways to express ourselves. I mean, my name's Dr. Joy. It's hard not to be optimistic, but it's also because I've seen change happen. The companies we audited, I talk about this in the book, they all stopped selling facial recognition to law enforcement, right? Or when I see people who have changed how they think, what they do, their approach to AI or their careers, or even what they think is possible for them. Even my story, right? Immigrant kid growing up in Oxford, Mississippi, having the incredible, like my life sounds like a movie. Like when
It
read
probably
about it.
will. It will probably be a movie one day. Seriously, we're going to speak it into existence. Like there will
Let's
be
speak it.
a
Let's speak
Dr.
it.
Joy documentary, and maybe they'll take a clip from this episode and
You
they'll
never
include
know.
it.
Never know. So all of those things. So a mentor told me once to never stop dreaming, and that's what I would pass on to you as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And before we wrap up our conversation today, is there any other piece of advice that you'd like to leave our listeners with?
Your story matters. I think it's so easy to feel like when you're hearing so much about how advanced technology is and how superhuman it is and all of these things, it can go faster, that it's more efficient. You start like, well, what do we still have as humans, and our ability to express ourselves, the relationships that we form, our lived experiences, our actual essence, that part that makes you from your biometrics to how you think to how you communicate. All of that is essential and it is your story. And so our humanity matters, our stories matter even more now in this age of excitement around what AI can do. The human element is always at the center.
And for folks that want to continue to follow along and support your work, where can they find you?
Yes, so I am on Instagram, Poet of Code there. And then AJL United across all platforms is how you can find us. And we're at ajl.org. So if you want to sign up for our newsletter, get some cool swag, be part of our latest campaigns, go check out ajl.org.
Awesome. Dr. Joy, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your energy with us today. I really appreciate it. And yeah, just thank you. I feel really good after this conversation. I feel much more optimistic and less scared about AI, which is good for me. I needed that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And that's a wrap on my conversation with Dr. Joy. If you want to keep learning about AI, we've got even more stories on girlboss.com. Click the link in the show notes to learn more about how to make your job easier with AI and our go-to AI tools to help you be more productive at work. Tune in next week for another episode with a very special guest. And until then, don't forget to rate this episode and leave a comment. What did you think about the episode? Send us a DM on Instagram at girlbossradio. As always, this podcast is produced by Victoria Christie and Camilla Nizio and edited by Diego Domine. Until next time, keep blooming.